Hello, welcome into this episode of the Sports Detective Show on YouTube. And to start the show today, we're going to be talking about some breaking news. This just broke about 3 hours ago. I'm recording this about 2 o'clock Central Time. This broke around 11 a.m. Central Time. And this news coming out of Denver, Russell Wilson is getting benched for the final 2 games of the regular season. Here, I'm about to share this tweet on the screen right now from Adam Schefter. Change in Denver. Broncos head coach Sean Payton has informed his team that Jarrett Stidham will start Sunday versus the Chargers with Russell Wilson as the backup. With a 1-3 record in the last 4 games, Denver is looking to spark its offense and see what it has in Stidham. This very much comes as a surprise because now I know this a little bit more personally, and again, I understand stats aren't everything. Stats don't tell the whole story of how a player plays, how a player performs. Stats can be uh, deceiving at times. But I did have Russell Wilson on my fantasy team in the last few weeks, and he has actually been pretty decent. And then I was kind of thinking, I'm like, oh, okay, well, obviously the win-loss thing hasn't been like the best thing for the Broncos this year. They're around 500. They're probably going to finish that 8-9, maybe 9-8 if they win their last 2 games. Um, but I was looking a little bit deeper at Russell Wilson's stats. He's actually been not even just like, hey, he's been average, not even above average. He's been good this year. He's top 10 in the NFL in passing touchdowns. He has 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He is I think he's 7th right now in passer rating. Take whatever you want out of that. And then he's also leads the NFL in fourth quarter comebacks, which, say whatever you want about fourth quarter comebacks, but I still think that's like a semi decent stat. So like statistically, he hasn't been doing bad. And you're kind of looking at this thing with like the Broncos and Sean Payton. Yeah, there's been a lot of friction, but you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe they're figuring some things out. And maybe this year it was kind of like the growing pains. And maybe next year they can, kind of build off the little bit of like the streams of success that they had this year. They have a whole offseason together. Russell gets to better, ingratiate himself with Peyton and the coaching staff and war with his teammates. But this decision, again, as I'm about to show you another Schefter tweet here, is actually probably a sign that it's an indicator that the Broncos are going to be going in a different direction. If not next year, probably the year after that. It's probably going to be this offseason, though. And here's the Schefter tweet as I have on the screen right now. Russell Wilson already has $39 million guaranteed for 2024, but he has an additional $37 million that would be guaranteed if he can't pass a physical by early March. Denver's moves to sit him assures that the money won't trigger. And Denver does this at a time when Wilson is the NFL's seventh rated passer. That's kind of a weird way to put that. He's 7th in passer rating with 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, as I already said. So basically what that means is what the Broncos are doing here, they're doing it a little bit. There's another tweet that I saw Ian Rappaport say, it's like, hey, even though the Broncos are getting a little bit of financial gain out of this, or not even a little bit, a lot of bit of financial gain out of this, this is also just like an on-field performance situation with Russell Wilson here, which does make sense with the Sean Payton outburst on the sidelines, where he's clearly taking him out on Russell Wilson. Then Sean Payton's going on like press conference, and he's like, it's like, me, bro, yelling at Russell Wilson. I was mad at the refs. It's like, well, you were like basically using Russell Wilson as a proxy for the refs if you actually believe that. But the interesting thing here with this, though, is getting back to that contract thing. So if Russell Wilson, let's say, were to play out the last 2 games of the regular season, and then let's say either next week or the last week of the season, Russell Wilson has an Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, tears an Achilles, tears an ACL. Maybe he gets the Brock Purdy arm injury. And basically, if he gets some sort of injury that would put him out either for like, a year or just even a few months, the Broncos are all of a sudden on the hook from, instead of paying him like close to $40 million, that $39 million, to basically it's like, hey, we owe this guy $80 million. And the Broncos didn't want to do that. And it looks like Sean Payton is going to be going in a different direction at quarterback next year. Now, This is what's really, and I've said this before on a few different videos and a few different podcasts talking about Sean Payton and the Broncos here. I still have no idea why he took this job. I still have no idea why he took this job because they gave up. Now I did see like a chart with like this with like the assets that they actually gave up for Russell Wilson. If you kind of look at it back again, it's not that bad. The Seahawks did have Devin Witherspoon. They got a few other players out of it, but they really didn't like it really wasn't some sort of heist. Honestly, probably the worst part of it with the Broncos was the fact that they just had to pay Russell Wilson. That's probably been the most detrimental thing about this. And the fact that they're moving off of him next year, they're still going to have like a cat pit, even if they trade him. And again, I still don't know why Sean Payton took this job. And again, the only conclusions I have for it is like money, which again, Sean Payton's got plenty of money. So I was kind of like, okay, is it like really that much about the money? But again, we always see a thing in sports where people always chase that money, even though you're like, aren't you okay with like having this situation where you're maybe going to be happier and like just make a little bit less? I'll digress from that point. And probably the real decision was roster control with Sean Payton here. And it's like, maybe I always thought that like, hey, if like it could happen 4 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now or whenever the playoffs start, where it's week one, Dallas travels to Tampa Bay, but they diarrhea their pants again and they lose to the playoffs to Baker Mayfield, and then the Cowboys make a move on and fire Mike McCarthy. It's like, well, if you're Sean Payton and you actually want to win another Super Bowl, wouldn't the road be easier just to go and coach the Cowboys with that loaded roster? And maybe you can be the person that's like the best coach since Jimmy Johnson with that organization and actually provide more kind of stability and organization to like the on the field performance aspect of the Cowboys. Or, go to a place with a franchise quarterback where it's like you get like the job that just opened up a few weeks ago with the Chargers, where you could have taken that job. There's a possibility too, if the Chargers were desperate enough, they would give you a good sway on roster control, and then you already have a franchise quarterback there in Justin Herbert. So it's always just been weird that he would go to Russell Wilson if this was his plan all along. And honestly, kind of my theory on it was like Sean Payton was getting smoke blown up his butt. And in some ways, rightfully so. And in some ways, it's kind of like that's just what we do to some people when they join the media. We really kind of like want to, because like people want to be liked. So they'll, tell people how much they like them. And I think Sean Payton spent a year in the Fox studios being told how smart he was, how much of an offensive genius he was, how he's going to the Hall of Fame. And I think Sean Payton really thought like, okay, watch this. I'll just go to Denver and I'll reinvent Russell Wilson and I'll take him and I'll have him, like watch this kind of a thing. And it's like, I think he was there and maybe like 4 or 5 weeks into the season, he was like, oh, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. So I'm still confused by the Sean Payton thing here. Cause it feels like because the Broncos are going to have a middle of the first round draft pick and like they had a top 5 pick or something like that, but they don't. So it's like, what is their move to get a quarterback? Are they going to do a thing where they trade up? Like they basically sell the farm to trade up into the top 10, top 5? Because again, too, guys, like if you're looking at the top part of this draft, more than likely the Patriots are going to want a quarterback because they're going to have a top 5 pick. Washington is up there, like I just said. Do they really want to go with Sam Howell again, or if they have a shot at a Drake May, go with that? The Bears, that's another interesting situation. Do they go ahead and get a quarterback, or they keep Justin Fields? So it's just very interesting here. Like, what will they do at the quarterback next year? Now, I'm not against moving off of Russell Wilson. You do have to take a little bit of a short-term cap hit, as we just kind of said, that money there. The other interesting question here too is with Russell Wilson is like what's next for him? Because he's clearly not going to be on the Broncos next year. So is this is this it for Russell Wilson? With all of the dysfunction I think we have seen at quarterbacks, or Joe Flacco all of a sudden is back on a team this year and actually playing well. And again, like we said, Russell Wilson's stats this year, have actually been pretty good. I think Russell Wilson's going to end up on some team. I'm not sure which one it's going to be, though. I kind of was trying to come up with a few different options here. Where is it like, is it Pittsburgh? Does Pittsburgh kind of just say, hey, we're done with this Kenny Pickett experiment? We've been muddling around trying to figure out, we had the Big Ben the last few years where he wasn't necessarily the best. Now we've kind of had this weird uh, Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky thing the last few years that hasn't necessarily worked. And we have this awesome roster. We have Mike Tomlin, who just every year seems to somehow get wins. If we could get Russell Wilson in here, could we go from like a 9-win season this year to a 11, 12-win season? Now, again, I'm not saying like that's the thought process of Pittsburgh potentially. I'm not saying that they could do that because I do think Russell Wilson has his flaws. I don't know if I was a team, unless I was really desperate, I'd want to get into the Russell Wilson business. Um, Atlanta, like could they do it? Because they're kind of one of those middle teams. Maybe they get that quarterback upgrade there. You convince yourselves that he's better than Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ritter. Do the Saints just go ahead and say, hey, this Derek Carr thing didn't work. Let's just try the same thing again. Again, I'm not sure about the Derek Carr contract situation there. I don't know how that would work. Do one of the New York teams get desperate? I don't know the team. The other team that I actually think could be kind of interesting in this is, and again, it depends if Bill Belichick stays or if he goes to another team, is could Bill Belichick and the Patriots possibly go for Russell Wilson? And Bill Belichick does the thing that he does with, because the Patriots are probably going to have a top 5 pick. Do they just trade back, accumulate assets, give up? Because I don't think they have to give up much to get Russell Wilson. They have to give up cap space, obviously, but they go and get Russell Wilson. They have a veteran quarterback, Bill Belichick, the infrastructure there, just him being a smart head coach. Maybe they convince themselves like, hey, we just need a veteran quarterback that has experience. And two, it's like Bill Belichick's like, hey, I played against Russell Wilson in the Super Bowl. He's a pretty good dude, pretty good quarterback. So that's another option. But man, part of me feels like this might be the end for Russell Wilson. Again, he's had a good season this year, but I don't know the situation that he goes to next year where he's going to be better than he was this year. So there you have it. This is kind of I don't know if it's a shock to me, but it is kind of like this is a very good reflection of what we've seen out of the Broncos this year, where Payton is having these outbursts with Wilson on the sidelines, clearly frustrated. This relationship hasn't worked. And the Broncos are basically saying, hey, we're cutting our ties of it now. We are moving on and we are going to go into a new direction. We're going to start the middle of the 2020s in the Sean Payton era. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for listening if you got all the way to this point. If you did, please hit that like button. And if you like content like this and other sports content, I've been doing this podcast now for about 3-4 years. I've just started putting clips on YouTube the last few weeks. I do a lot of long form interviews with people all over the country. I've done over 50 plus interviews with people talking NBA, college basketball, NFL, college football. I've done a lot of college football. So if you like content like that, feel free to explore the page and subscribe to the podcast. I'd really appreciate it. It will really help support the show and help it grow. So thank you. Talk to you next time.